In a dramatic shift in the power dynamics of northern Syria, Turkey has issued an ultimatum demanding that Kurdish fighters affiliated with the YPG, People's Defense Units, and PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, vacate territories recently taken over by rebel groups supported by Ankara. This move is a significant escalation in the already tense and complex situation in Syria, particularly in areas that are home to both Syrian Kurdish fighters and Turkish-backed opposition forces. The call for the Kurdish fighters to leave comes in the wake of growing Turkish military activity in northern Syria. Turkey's aim is to solidify its influence in the region by supporting rebel groups that oppose the Syrian government and Kurdish militias. Ankara has long considered the YPG, which has been a primary force in the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, a terrorist organization due to its alleged ties to the PKK. The PKK has been engaged in an insurgency in Turkey since the 1980s, demanding greater autonomy for Kurds, a conflict that has cost tens of thousands of lives. Because of this long-standing conflict, Turkey's position is that any Kurdish militant group, regardless of their political stance, poses a national security threat. Turkey's demand for Kurdish forces to exit Syria has sparked tensions with the United States, which has supported the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, in their battle against the Islamic State, ISIS, in Syria. The US views the SDF, despite its Kurdish composition, as an essential partner in the fight against ISIS, which has been largely decimated in Syria. However, the relationship between the US and the YPG, as part of the SDF, has become a point of contention for Turkey, which has repeatedly urged Washington to stop backing Kurdish militias it deems a threat. The underlying tension stems from Turkey's broader geopolitical strategy in the region. For Ankara, the formation of a Kurdish autonomous region in northern Syria represents a red line that cannot be crossed. With Kurdish populations on both sides of its border with Syria and Iraq, Turkey views any Kurdish empowerment in these regions as a potential precursor to the growth of Kurdish separatism within its own borders. The Turkish government has consistently argued that the presence of the YPG in northern Syria, particularly along the Turkish-Syrian border, is an existential threat. As a result, Turkey has launched several military operations into Syria, aiming to create a safe zone free of Kurdish militia groups and to provide support to Syrian rebel factions that are aligned with Ankara's interests. The timing of Turkey's latest demand comes as part of a broader Turkish offensive that has seen Ankara-backed rebel groups take control of key areas in northern Syria. These areas, previously held by Kurdish forces, are now under the control of Syrian opposition groups that are supported by Turkey. The Turkish military has been involved in a series of operations aimed at pushing the YPG out of strategically important regions, including those along Syria's northeastern border and the areas surrounding the Turkish-controlled Euphrates Shield region. Turkey has repeatedly stated that these operations are essential to its national security, as they aim to prevent the establishment of a Kurdish state in northern Syria and ensure the defeat of PKK-affiliated militants. The Turkish ultimatum has sparked immediate condemnation from Kurdish groups, who view this as an existential threat to their survival and autonomy within Syria. The SDF, which is predominantly Kurdish but includes Arab, Assyrian, and other minority groups, has warned that Turkey's pressure will destabilize the region and potentially lead to further conflict. Kurdish leaders have also accused Turkey of using the threat of military force to achieve its political aims, pointing to Ankara's support for armed opposition groups in Syria. These groups, while opposed to the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad, often lack cohesive political structures and have been accused of committing human rights abuses in areas under their control. The demand for Kurdish forces to leave Syria also places significant strain on US-Turkey relations. The US has long supported the SDF in Syria, not only for their role in defeating ISIS but also for their political vision of an inclusive Syria, where Kurds, Arabs, and other ethnic groups can coexist. Washington's support for the SDF has often been at odds with Turkey's demands, and the Trump and Biden administrations have found themselves caught in the middle. The US has attempted to reassure Turkey of its commitment to addressing its security concerns while trying to maintain its strategic relationship with the Kurdish forces fighting ISIS. This diplomatic tension is compounded by the broader regional dynamics. Turkey's operations in northern Syria are part of a larger strategy to assert itself as a regional power in the Middle East, with a focus on containing Kurdish influence. This includes not only military actions in Syria but also significant political and economic efforts to maintain influence in neighboring Iraq, where the PKK has a long-standing presence. Turkey has also bolstered its ties with Russia and Iran, both of which have their own interests in Syria, leading to a complex web of alliances and rivalries in the region. At the same time, Syria's government, under Bashar al-Assad, has been consolidating its power after more than a decade of civil war, with support from Russia and Iran. While Damascus officially opposes Kurdish autonomy, the Syrian government is unlikely to align itself with Turkey's demands, especially given that Kurdish forces have fought against both ISIS and the Assad regime. The Syrian Kurds, in turn, are wary of a Turkish takeover of areas under their control and are reluctant to give up ground to Turkish-backed opposition forces. The situation is further complicated by the involvement of other regional players, including the United States and Russia, both of which have military presences in Syria and competing interests. The humanitarian impact of these developments cannot be ignored. Northern Syria has already seen significant displacement due to the fighting between Turkish-backed forces and Kurdish groups, with civilian populations caught in the crossfire. The Kurdish-led administration in northeast Syria has expressed fears that further military pressure from Turkey will lead to a new wave of refugees, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. The US and other international actors have warned of the potential for increased instability, which would further complicate efforts to rebuild the country after years of civil war. As tensions escalate, the question remains as to whether diplomatic solutions can be found. While Turkey has made it clear that it will not back down on its demands, the US and other Western allies have tried to balance their support for the SDF with their strategic relationship with Turkey. This delicate diplomatic balancing act will likely continue to be tested in the coming months, as the region's complex web of alliances and rivalries continues to evolve. In conclusion, Turkey's ultimatum for Kurdish forces to leave Syria marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict in northern Syria. It highlights the increasingly fraught relations between Turkey, the US, and Kurdish groups, and underscores the broader regional tensions that have shaped the Middle East for decades. As Turkey presses its demands, the future of Syria's Kurdish population remains uncertain.